1947. A subway car in Harlem. 7 thugs drag a woman by her hair. A war veteran fights back all 7 of them. He bleeds. He wins. Then he learns her name, Mrs. Bumpy Johnson. 72 hours later. Those 7 men beg for bullets. Harlem says no. Their boss dies anyway. Their organization, gone by sunrise. What's a fate worse than death? September 14, 1947. The F train cuts through Harlem at 9:47 p.m. Metal wheels shrieking against rails that haven't seen maintenance since Dutch Schultz got 3 bullets in his gut back in '35. 43 bodies crammed into a car built for 30. The smell is sweat and factory grease and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that comes from working doubles just to afford a room you share with strangers. Nobody makes eye contact. That's the law down here. You study the floor, or the Lucky Strike ads, or the scratched-in graffiti that says things nobody will say out loud. You don't look at faces because faces mean trouble, and trouble means bleeding in places where nobody calls ambulance. The subway operates on older laws than what the police uphold. Simpler laws, harder laws. You witness a crime. You go blind. You hear screaming. Your ears stop working. You see someone getting hurt. You develop a sudden fascination with your shoelaces. That's survival when the train goes underground, and the rules from the street don't reach down here. 5 Irish enforcers board at 125th Street. Not workers heading home. Not honest men tired from honest labor. Muscle. The kind who collect protection money and leave examples when people forget to pay. They spread across the car like an infection, taking up 3 times the space they need, making everyone uncomfortable, daring someone to object so they can demonstrate what objection costs. The leader is maybe 35, red hair starting to gray at the temples, knuckles thick with scar tissue from breaking jaws against brick walls. Everyone calls him Red because his hair looks like rust and his temper runs hotter than the 3rd rail. He's spent 15 years teaching lessons with lead pipes and baseball bats, and he's never met a problem he couldn't solve by making someone bleed. An old man sits near the door, 70 if he's a day, hands trembling from age or fear or the cheap wine that helps him forget what kind of neighborhood he lives in. He's holding the Amsterdam News but not reading it, just hiding behind it like newsprint can stop what's coming. Red walks over, plants himself above the old man. Doesn't say anything at first, just looms, casts a shadow that swallows the old man whole. You're in my seat. The car has 40 empty seats. Nobody mentions this fact. Nobody breathes. The old man tries to stand. His legs betray him. Arthritis or terror or both. He stumbles, catches himself on the pole. Red grabs his wrist, not to help, to teach. He bends it backward, slow, methodical, savoring the moment like good whiskey. The bones don't just break. They shatter. The wrist folds at an angle that makes geometry scream. Tendons snap, ligaments tear. The sound fills the subway car like a firecracker going off in a closet. The old man doesn't scream. Terror stole his voice. He just makes this high, keening sound, like air leaking from a punctured tire, while tears cut tracks through the dirt on his face, and his wrist hangs loose like a puppet with cut strings. Red releases him, steps back, watches the old man collapse into his seat, cradling his destroyed wrist against his chest, whimpering. That's the message. That's the lesson. We own this train. We own this neighborhood. Step wrong and we'll break you for the entertainment value. The other passengers study the floor harder. Pray to gods they stopped believing in years ago. Count the seconds until their stop arrives and they can escape. That's when Mamie Johnson boards at 135th Street. She's 43 years old. 5'6" in shoes that have been resoled twice. Wearing a blue dress she mended herself because new dresses are luxuries, and luxuries are for white women in better neighborhoods. Her purse contains $4.63, her house keys, and a .38 special revolver that Bumpy gave her 3 years ago with instructions about when to use it and when to run like hell. She sees the old man immediately, sees the wrist bent at that impossible angle, sees bone fragments pressing against skin from the inside, sees the 5 Irish enforcers spreading out like wolves who just tasted blood and want more. Mamie does something that violates every rule of subway survival. She doesn't look away. She walks directly to the middle of the car, sits down across from Red, sets her purse on her lap with both hands folded over it, and stares at him with the kind of calm that comes from knowing something these men haven't learned yet. Red notices, impossible not to. Every other person in this car is performing a master class in studied ignorance, but this black woman in a twice-mended dress is looking at him like he's a roach that needs stepping on. "You got some kind of problem, girl." Mamie doesn't respond, doesn't blink, doesn't show fear or anger or anything except this absolute certainty that she belongs exactly where she is. The youngest enforcer, can't be more than 20. Laughs, sharp and ugly. Thinks she's sweet on you, Red. Thinks she wants to find out what Irish equipment looks like. Red takes 3 steps forward, the other 4 shift position, blocking the exits, making sure everyone stays for the show. This is how control works. Public humiliation, public violence, public lessons that people remember long enough to keep paying. Asked you a question. His hand reaches for her hair. Mamie still doesn't move, but something changes behind her eyes. Something these predators should recognize but don't. Because predators spend their lives hunting rabbits and never imagine the rabbit might have teeth. Red's fingers close on a handful of her hair. He pulls hard, yanks her head back far enough that tendons stand out in her neck like cables, far enough that her spine protests, far enough that breathing becomes difficult. That's when Mamie speaks. 6 words, quiet enough that only Red can hear them. "My husband's name is Bumpy Johnson." Every muscle in Red's body locks. His face goes pale under the dirt and stubble. Because even Irish muscle from Hell's Kitchen knows that name. Knows it means bodies in the Hudson River wearing concrete overshoes. Knows it means funerals with closed caskets because the deceased isn't recognizable anymore. Knows it means territory that belongs to Harlem and Harlem doesn't share. But Red's hand is already in her hair. His crew is watching. Letting go now. Backing down from a black woman on a Harlem train. That's weakness. That's showing fear. That's inviting every 2-bit hustler in the neighborhood to test him. So Red makes the decision that will cost him everything he has and several things he didn't know could be taken. He pulls harder. Mamie's head goes back another inch. Vertebrae pop. Her airway compresses. The angle makes her look like a sacrifice on an altar. And somewhere in Harlem, 3 blocks away, a phone rings in a barber shop. Marcus picks up, listens. His face goes hard. He covers the mouthpiece and looks at the back room where Bumpy Johnson is reviewing the weekly numbers. "Boss, it's about Mamie. 72 hours until these 5 men learn what happens when you put hands on the wrong woman. 72 hours until the West Side Irish learn why Harlem's borders aren't suggestions. 72 hours until Red Malone wishes someone had just put a bullet in his brain instead of letting him live through what comes next. Samuel Price boards the F train at 145th Street, carrying 3 years of European mud on his boots and the kind of stupid optimism that gets black men killed in America. He's 26 years old, 6'2", 190 pounds of muscle built from carrying wounded soldiers through German machine gun fire, because leaving them meant listening to their screams in his sleep forever. Bronze Star recipient. Decorated veteran. Black man who actually believed that killing Nazis for democracy might make his own country treat him like a human being instead of a problem to be managed. The belief didn't survive the voyage home. He came back to the same segregated Harlem he left, applied for jobs that went to white boys who never heard a shot fired in anger, tried to use his GI Bill at City College and got told the classes were full. Maybe try again next semester. Don't call us. Watched America thank him for his service by treating him like he was invisible unless he was threatening. But some part of Sam still believes, still thinks that standing up for what's right matters, still carries that European idealism like a photograph that hasn't faded yet, like a memory of a place where maybe things were different even though they really weren't. He sees what's happening to Mamie before his brain can stop his body from reacting. Sees the Irish enforcer with his fist buried in her hair. Sees her head wrenched back at an angle that makes cervical vertebrae visible under her skin. Sees the 4 other enforcers positioned to prevent interference. Sees 40 people in this car, all performing the same synchronized act of determined blindness. Every instinct Sam developed growing up in Harlem screams at him to look away, to study the advertisements, to count the stops until he can get off this train and pretend he never saw anything. But 3 years of war broke something fundamental in his survival mechanism. 3 years of watching men die because nobody helped them. 3 years of believing the propaganda about freedom and justice and how standing up to evil matters. Sam stands up. The subway car goes silent, not the normal silence of people avoiding trouble. The shocked silence of watching someone step off a platform into empty air. The horrified silence of knowing you're about to witness a murder and being unable to prevent it. Let her go. Sam's voice is steady, clear. The voice he used to give orders under artillery fire when men needed someone to sound certain, even when death was a statistical probability approaching 100%. Red turns slowly. Studies Sam with the kind of attention a butcher gives a side of beef before deciding where to make the first cut. Sees a black man in cheap clothes with scars on his knuckles and that particular way of standing that says military training. Says someone taught him to fight. Says he's too stupid to understand that training doesn't matter when you're outnumbered 5-1 on a subway car with no exits. This ain't your business, boy. I'm making it my business. Sam takes a step forward. Red looks at his crew. Grins. Because this is even better than breaking the old man's wrist. This is a public beating. This is theater. This is the kind of lesson that people talk about in whispers for months. You really want to bleed for some random woman you don't even know? Sam doesn't answer, just keeps walking forward. Closing the distance. The knife comes from behind. Not from Red, from the youngest enforcer. The eager one. The one who hasn't learned yet that knives are for killing, not for teaching lessons. The blade punches in just above Sam's left kidney, angled upward, searching for the organs that end lives quickly. Sam twists at the last second, not fast enough to avoid it completely. The steel opens his side in a line of white-hot fire that makes his vision blur. But the twist is enough that the blade misses everything vital. Just meat. Just muscle. Just pain without the immediate death that should follow. He spins. His elbow catches the young enforcer in the throat. The sound it makes cartilage collapsing. Windpipe crushing is wet and final and completely unmistakable. The kid drops like his strings got cut, hits the floor choking, drowning on air that can't reach his lungs anymore, clawing at his ruined throat while his face goes from red to purple to a shade of blue that says, "Death is coming and coming fast." The other 4 pile onto Sam like hyenas on wounded prey. Fists and boots and elbows. The kind of violence that has no rules and no limits and no purpose except causing maximum damage. They drive him to the floor. Kick his ribs until bones crack with sounds like green wood snapping. Stomp on his hands until knuckles shatter and fingers bend at angles that make people look away. A boot heel catches his jaw, snapping it sideways, breaking it so badly that his teeth cut through his cheek from the inside, and he can taste his own meat mixed with blood and broken enamel. Sam fought Germans in the Ardennes, survived artillery barrages that turned forests into moonscapes, killed enemy soldiers in close quarters with bayonets and rifle butts in his bare hands when the ammunition ran out. But this isn't war. This is execution. This is 5 men beating one because they can. Because it sends a message. Because fear only works if people see what happens when you resist. They break him systematically. Ribs fractured, jaw shattered. The knife wound in his side, pumping blood across the dirty subway floor in rhythmic pulses that match his heartbeat. His vision goes white around the edges from shock and pain, and the dawning understanding that heroism in Harlem gets you killed slowly while people watch. Red stands over Sam's broken body. Anybody else want to play Captain America? Silence. The kind that says no. The kind that says we didn't see anything. The kind that says, thank God it's him and not me. Red turns back to Mamie. Now then, where were we? Mamie's hand goes into her purse. The .38 special comes out smooth as silk. No trembling, no hesitation. She points it directly at Red's face. Her finger finds the trigger, pulls. Click. Empty chamber. She pulls again. Click. Nothing. The revolver Bumpy gave her. The last line of defense. The weapon that was supposed to save her life. Empty. Nobody breathes. Nobody moves. The moment stretches out like broken glass, sharp and dangerous and absolutely silent. Red's face splits into a grin. Pure predatory joy. Because this is perfect. This is better than breaking the old man's wrist. Better than beating Sam half to death. This is the story his crew will tell in every bar from Hell's Kitchen to the Bowery. The uppity black woman who tried to shoot Red Malone with an empty gun. He reaches for the revolver. Mamie doesn't let go. They stand there connected by steel and determination, and the absolute knowledge that whoever releases their grip first loses everything. In this neighborhood, standing up isn't courage. It's choosing how you die. It's deciding whether you go quietly into that good night or make them work for it. Sam Price chose to make them work. Chose to bleed where everyone could see. Chose to believe that 3 years fighting fascism meant something, even though it means nothing at all. And now he's dying on a subway floor while Harlem watches and pretends it doesn't see a goddamn thing. The empty click doesn't just end hope. It murders it, buries it, salts the earth so nothing can grow there again. Bumpy Johnson holds the useless .38 special like it still matters. Red Malone grabs the barrel, starts pulling. She holds tighter. The revolver becomes a rope in a tug-of-war where the loser gets hurt in ways that leave permanent scars. Let go. Red punctuates each word with another yank on the gun. Mamie doesn't. Can't. Because letting go means admitting defeat. Means Sam Price bled on this floor for nothing. Means everyone in this car learns that resistance ends in pain, and submission is the only path to survival. Behind them. Sam tries to stand one more time. His hands slip in the pool of his own blood spreading across the subway floor. His broken ribs grind against each other with every breath. His jaw hangs at an angle that makes speech impossible. But he's still trying to push himself up because dying on your feet beats dying on your knees, even when dying is the only certainty left. The youngest enforcer, the one Sam hit, makes wet gurgling sounds on the floor. His face has gone from purple to a sick gray blue. His fingers claw at his crushed windpipe like he can dig out the damage and make it work again. He's dying, slowly, loudly, and nobody is helping because helping means becoming a target. The train starts to slow. 155th Street station approaching. 90 seconds until the doors open, and this moment either ends or explodes into something that spreads beyond this car, beyond this night, beyond any possibility of containment. Red jerks the gun hard enough to break Mamie's grip. She stumbles backward before she can recover. His hand closes around her throat, not squeezing hard enough to kill, just hard enough to make breathing difficult, just hard enough to demonstrate absolute control. You know what happens to women who pull guns on white men. His face is close enough that Mamie can count the broken blood vessels in his eyes, can smell the cheap whiskey on his breath, can see the absolute certainty that he's about to hurt her in ways that will make Sam's beating look merciful by comparison. The doors hiss open. Ellsworth. Bumpy Johnson steps onto the subway car. He's 41 years old, 5'9", 160 pounds, wearing a suit that cost 6 months of factory wages. His shoes are polished to a mirror shine. His tie is real silk, not the rayon imitations most men wear. His face shows absolutely nothing at all. He doesn't run, doesn't shout, doesn't draw the .45 automatic he carries in a custom shoulder holster designed not to print under his jacket. He just walks forward at exactly the same pace you'd use to cross a street, or buy a newspaper, or do any ordinary thing that doesn't require urgency. 4 men board behind him. Bumpy's men. Harlem enforcers who have been collecting debts and breaking bones since before Pearl Harbor. They spread out without being told. Block the exits. Make sure nobody leaves this car until everything is settled. Red Malone sees Bumpy. Recognition hits him like cold water. His hand loosens slightly on Mamie's throat. Not enough to let her breathe easily. Just enough to show he understands that the situation has fundamentally changed. Johnson. Red's voice has shifted, lost some of its edge, gained a careful neutrality. Didn't realize this was your woman? Bumpy doesn't respond immediately. He looks at Mamie, sees the marks on her throat where Red's fingers are leaving bruises, looks at Sam Price bleeding out on the floor, looks at the old man cradling his shattered wrist, looks at the young enforcer choking to death, takes in every detail, catalogs every injury, files everything away for later consideration. His expression doesn't change. You know how these things go, Red continues. His tone is almost reasonable now, like he's explaining a misunderstanding between professionals. She pulled iron on me. My boys were just defending themselves. Nothing personal, just business. Business is choking a woman half to death. Teaching respect. You know how it is. Can't let people think they can pull guns without consequences. Bumpy nods slowly, like he's considering Red's logic. Like maybe it makes some kind of sense from a certain perspective. Let her go. Sure, soon as we clear this up, soon as everyone understands, let her go right now, or I kill all 5 of you before this train reaches the next station. There's no anger in Bumpy's voice, no threat, no emotion at all, just information. Like telling someone it's raining outside, or the coffee is too hot, or gravity still functions according to established physical laws. Red looks at his 4 remaining men, looks at Bumpy's 4 men, does mathematics that any 3rd grader could handle. Even if his crew is tougher than Bumpy's crew, which they absolutely are not, fighting here means bodies and witnesses and police reports and problems that metastasize into situations nobody can control. He releases Mamie's throat. She drops to her feet, catches herself, stands upright, walks to Bumpy's side, still holding the empty .38, still not showing fear, even though her throat is already turning purple. We're done here, Red says. Clean slate. No hard feelings. Just a misunderstanding between professionals. Bumpy looks down at Sam Price, at the young enforcer dying on the floor, at the old man's ruined wrist. You broke an old man's hand for sitting in a seat. Business, nothing personal. You stabbed a war hero for being brave. He attacked my man first. You put your hands on my wife. The silence that follows isn't actually silence. It's the sound of every person in this subway car understanding simultaneously that words have stopped working, that logic no longer applies, that they're about to witness something they'll never be able to unsee. Bumpy reaches inside his jacket. Red tenses, prepares for the .45 to come out, prepares to duck or draw his own weapon or do whatever desperate thing might let him survive the next 10 seconds. But Bumpy doesn't draw his gun. He pulls out a business card, heavy white cardstock, embossed lettering, his name and a phone number and nothing else. He extends it toward Red. 72 hours. You call that number. You apologize for what happened here. You pay the medical bills for everyone you hurt. You promise on your mother's grave that this never happens again. Red takes the card, studies it like it might contain hidden messages. And if we don't, Bumpy's face finally shows something. Not anger, not rage, just the cold certainty of a man who has killed before and will kill again, and sleeps fine afterward. Then I stop being professional. The most dangerous man in any situation isn't the one who arrives during the violence. It's the one who arrives after the lines have been crossed, after the damage has been done, after forgiveness stops being possible and revenge becomes the only mathematics that matters. The train pulls into 155th Street. The doors open. Bumpy helps Mamie off the train. His men help Sam Price. Careful with the knife wound, gentle with the broken ribs. Someone is already calling for an ambulance. Someone else is making the old man comfortable. The 5 Irish enforcers stand in the subway car as it pulls away from the platform. Stand there with the knowledge that they just made a mistake. Stand there understanding that 72 hours is both a gift and a countdown. Stand there knowing that the business card in Red's hand is simultaneously an offer of mercy and a notification of execution. Red Malone looks at the card, looks at his youngest enforcer finally going still on the floor. Eyes glazed, face the color of spoiled meat, looks at the fear in his remaining crew's eyes, and he understands what Bumpy Johnson was really communicating. Not a threat, not a negotiation. A notification about what has already been decided, an opportunity to participate in their own ending, or have it happen to them without their input. 72 hours until Harlem teaches a lesson that even professional killers will refuse to discuss afterward. 72 hours until the West Side Irish learn why some territories have borders that cannot be crossed. 72 hours until Red Malone discovers there are fates worse than a bullet to the brain. The countdown started the moment his hand closed on Mamie Johnson's hair. Now it's just a question of whether he's smart enough to make the phone call or stupid enough to let pride kill him. The business card sits in Red Malone's hand like a live grenade with the pin already pulled. He stands on the platform at 155th Street watching the train that just delivered his death sentence pull away into the tunnel. His 3 remaining men cluster around him like sheep waiting for the wolf. The youngest one, Tommy, keeps looking back toward the tracks, like maybe Bumpy Johnson will reappear and finish what the subway started. "What do we do?" "Boss," Tommy's voice cracks. Kid can't be more than 22. This is the first time he's seen real power up close, the kind that doesn't need to shout. Red looks at the card again. White cardstock. Expensive. The kind of quality that says money and taste and the patience to invest in details most people ignore. Just a name and a phone number embossed in black ink. No threats. No demands. Just information. Call within 72 hours or don't. Your choice. Except it's not a choice at all, and everyone knows it. "We call Flanigan," Red says. Patrick Flanigan runs the West Side Irish. Controls everything from the docks to the warehouses to the protection rackets that keep money flowing uptown. He's the kind of boss who settles disputes with baseball bats and buries problems in the Hudson River wearing concrete shoes. They walk 4 blocks to a payphone outside Murphy's bar. Red drops a nickel, dials, waits while the phone rings 3 times before Flanigan's voice comes through. Rough as sandpaper and twice as abrasive. This better be important. We got a problem. Red explains what happened on the train. The woman, the gun, Bumpy Johnson appearing like he knew exactly where to be and when. The business card, the 72-hour deadline, silence on the other end. Not the good kind. The kind that says, Flanigan is doing mathematics about how much this is going to cost and who's going to pay for it. You put hands on Bumpy Johnson's wife. Didn't know she was his. You broke an old man's wrist and stabbed a veteran on a public train where 40 people watched. Flanigan's voice drops to the temperature of a meat locker. You handed Johnson an excuse to start a war and made it look justified. We can handle this. We got numbers. We got Horace. You got 72 hours to make this right, or I feed you to Johnson myself. The line goes dead. Red hangs up, looks at his crew. They heard enough. They know what Flanigan just told them. You're on your own. Fix it or die trying. Back at the warehouse on 10th Avenue. Red pours whiskey with shaking hands. He's broken bones and taken territory and put men in hospitals for 20 years. But this is different. This isn't a fight. This isn't even a negotiation. This is an execution with a timer attached. Tommy paces. We should hit him first. Go to Harlem. Burn his spots. Show him we don't back down. Red almost laughs. Almost. You don't get it. Kid. Bumpy didn't threaten us because he doesn't need to. He gave us a choice because making us choose is worse than just killing us. I don't understand. He wants us to know we're already dead. Wants us to spend 3 days thinking about it. Wants us to imagine what he's planning. Wants fear to do the work before he lifts a finger. The whiskey doesn't help. Red pours another. His mind keeps replaying the moment on the train. Bumpy's face. Calm as Sunday morning. No anger. No hate. Just that cold certainty that said your fate is already decided and nothing you do matters anymore. Real power doesn't need violence. Real power is making someone understand that violence is coming and they can't stop it. Real power is the waiting, the knowing. The countdown that turns hours into torture. Red looks at the business card again. 72 hours to call and beg. To apologize. To pay medical bills like some kind of insurance salesman instead of a man who's been taking what he wants for 2 decades. Or 72 hours to prepare for war against a man who owns Harlem the way God owns Sunday. The phone sits 10 feet away. All he has to do is pick it up. Dial the number. Say the words that might save his life. But saying those words means admitting he's scared. Means showing weakness to his crew. Means every 2-bit hustler in Hell's Kitchen learns that Red Malone backed down from a black gangster. Pride is a strange thing. It makes men do stupid things. Makes them choose death over humiliation. Makes them believe that dying on their feet beats living on their knees even when dying accomplishes nothing except filling a grave. Red puts the business card in his pocket. We don't call, he says. We prepare. Tommy stops pacing. Prepare for what? War, because in 72 hours, Bumpy Johnson is coming for us. And when he arrives, I want to be ready to show him that the West Side Irish don't bow to anybody. The decision is made. The die is cast. The countdown continues, ticking toward an ending that's already been written. Because real power doesn't need blood immediately. It just needs time. Time for fear to ferment. Time for imagination to torture. Time for men to understand that their choices stopped mattering the moment they crossed the wrong line. Bumpy Johnson gave Red Malone 72 hours. Not as mercy. as a lesson about what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. 48 hours after the subway. Red's warehouse on 10th Avenue. 3 a.m. They're waiting for Bumpy to make his move. 6 men armed with shotguns and revolvers and the kind of desperate courage that comes from knowing you're already dead. Red hasn't slept, hasn't eaten, just whiskey and cigarettes and staring at shadows waiting for them to turn into killers. The door doesn't explode inward. Nobody kicks it down. There's no dramatic entrance. It just opens, quiet as a confession. Bumpy Johnson walks in alone. No backup, no guns drawn. Just him in that same expensive suit. Walking across the concrete floor like he owns it, like he's inspecting property he's thinking about buying. Red's men raise their weapons, 6 barrels pointed at one man. Enough firepower to turn him into red mist. Bumpy doesn't flinch, doesn't stop walking, just keeps coming forward with that same terrible calm. "You didn't call," Bumpy says. Statement, not question. Red stands, shotgun in his hands, finger on the trigger. "We don't bow to nobody, not to you, not to Harlem, not to any." The gunshot is so sudden that Red doesn't process it until the pain arrives. Bumpy's .45 is already back in its holster. The shot came and went faster than thought. Red looks down. His right hand is gone. Not wounded. Gone. The shotgun clatters to the floor. His hand goes with it, severed at the wrist. Bone and meat and blood spraying across concrete. He doesn't scream. Shock steals his voice. He just stares at the stump where his hand used to be, watching blood pump out in rhythm with his heartbeat. "I gave you a choice," Bumpy says. His voice is conversational, like discussing weather. "You chose wrong." Red's men don't move. 6 armed men watching their boss bleed out, and none of them pull a trigger because they understand now. This isn't a fight. This is a demonstration. This is a lesson being taught. Bumpy walks to Tommy, the young one, the scared one. "What's your name?" Tommy. The kid can barely speak. "Tommy, I want you to remember something." Bumpy reaches into his jacket. Tommy flinches, but Bumpy just pulls out a handkerchief. White silk. Expensive. He wraps it around Red's stump, applies pressure, slows the bleeding. "I didn't come here to kill you. I came to mark you. Mark us, so everyone knows what happens when you touch my family." Bumpy steps back, looks at Red. "You'll live. The hand won't grow back. Every time you look at that stump, you'll remember the woman on the subway. You'll remember the choice I gave you. You'll remember that I could have killed you, but chose something worse." Red collapses. Blood loss and shock and the understanding that Bumpy is right. Death would have been kinder. Death is an ending. This is a beginning. The beginning of living as a warning, as an example, as a cautionary tale that other men will tell in whispers. "Take him to a hospital," Bumpy tells Tommy. "Tell them it was an accident, a loading dock, a piece of machinery. They won't believe you, but they'll pretend to. That's how this works. And if we come after you," Tommy's voice is barely a whisper, "then next time I take more than a hand." Bumpy walks to the door. Stops. Turns back. The subway belongs to Harlem now. The train, the platform, the station, all of it. You see someone from my neighborhood. You look away. You pretend you're blind. You remember what happened here. He leaves the same way he came. Quiet. Calm. Like he just finished buying groceries. The 6 men stand in silence, staring at Red's severed hand on the floor, at the blood spreading across concrete, at the mark Bumpy Johnson just carved into their organization. Killing sends a message that ends with a funeral. Marking sends a message that lasts as long as the victim breathes. Red Malone will live for another 30 years. He'll learn to write left-handed. He'll tell people the hand got caught in machinery. He'll never set foot in Harlem again. But every time he looks at that stump, he'll remember. Every time someone asks what happened, he'll remember. Every time he reaches for something and finds empty air, he'll remember. The woman on the subway, the business card, the choice he made, the price he paid. That's real power. Not the bullet, the scar. Not the ending, the reminder. Bumpy Johnson didn't just win the subway. He turned Red Malone into a monument, a living testament to what happens when you cross the wrong line in the wrong neighborhood with the wrong man's wife. The mark is permanent. The lesson never ends. The call comes into the 32nd precinct at 4:17 a.m. Man down at Roosevelt Hospital. Gunshot wound, hand severed. Possible gang violence. Detective Frank Morrison arrives at 4:45. 22 years on the force. He's seen everything. Stabbings, shootings, bodies in the river, bodies in basements, bodies that needed dental records because faces were gone. He walks into the emergency room where Red Malone sits on a gurney. Stump, wrapped in bloody bandages, face the color of old newspaper. What happened? Loading dock accident. Red's voice is flat. Dead. Machinery malfunction. Morrison looks at the chart. Single gunshot wound. Clean amputation. Powder burns on the sleeve consistent with close range. This wasn't machinery. This was execution. You want to try again? Machinery malfunction. Red stares at the wall. That's my statement. Morrison knows this dance. Knows when victims become co-conspirators in their own silence. Knows when fear runs deeper than justice. But he has to go through the motions. Has to file the paperwork. Has to pretend the system still functions. We found your hand at a warehouse on 10th Avenue, along with enough blood to paint a house. Morrison pulls out his notebook. You want to tell me what really happened? Red looks at Morrison, really looks at him, and Morrison sees something in those eyes that makes his own blood run cold. Not anger, not pain, pure terror. The kind that comes from understanding something fundamental about how the world actually works. Machinery, Red whispers. That's all I know. Morrison interviews the 6 witnesses. Same story. Machinery malfunction. Loading dock accident. Nobody saw anything unusual. Nobody heard a gunshot. Nobody remembers a well-dressed black man walking in and out like he owned the place. 43 witnesses from the subway. Morrison tracks them down one by one. Old man with the broken wrist fell downstairs. War veteran with the knife wound, bar fight. Got confused. Can't remember details. Woman who was grabbed by the hair. Must be mistaken identity. She wasn't there. Doesn't know what Morrison is talking about. Every single witness develops sudden amnesia. Every single one forgets how to describe faces or remember events or provide details that might require them to testify in court. Morrison sits in his car outside the 32nd precinct at 6 a.m. watching the sun come up. He's been a cop long enough to know what this means. The city made a choice. The system made a calculation. Prosecuting this case means starting a war, means dragging Harlem into court, means asking 43 people to testify against Bumpy Johnson and putting them in danger that no police protection can prevent. It means admitting that the law doesn't reach everywhere, that some neighborhoods have their own justice, that some disputes get settled without judges or juries or any pretense that the system controls what happens in the dark. The file lands on Captain McKinley's desk at 9 a.m. Morrison watches him read it, watches his face go through the calculations, the mathematics of risk versus reward, the politics of touching something that might burn down more than it solves. Close it, McKinley says. Sir. We have a victim. We have witnesses. We have We have nothing. Victim says machinery. Witnesses say nothing. No complainant means no crime. McKinley tosses the file back. Close it. Morrison closes it, stamps it, files it in a basement where it will gather dust until the building collapses or the city burns down. The newspapers don't cover it. The radio doesn't mention it. The story dies before it's born because telling the story means admitting that power exists outside the law, and sometimes the law chooses to look away rather than confront what it can't control. Nature abhors a vacuum. When law creates empty space, something else fills it. Something older, something harder, something that doesn't need courtrooms or paperwork or the pretense of civilization. Harlem fills that vacuum. Has been filling it since the police decided that some neighborhoods aren't worth protecting and some citizens aren't worth the trouble. Bumpy Johnson doesn't ask for permission, doesn't file forms, doesn't wait for approval from men in suits who pretend to run a city they abandoned years ago. He just takes the space the city left empty, fills it with his own law, his own justice, his own system of order that works because everyone understands the rules and what happens when you break them. The subway belongs to Harlem now, not because Bumpy conquered it, because the city surrendered it, because law enforcement chose filing cabinets over enforcement and everyone pretended not to notice. When the law looks away, real power doesn't ask permission. It just steps into the empty space and starts making rules. Red Malone's severed hand becomes a story nobody tells officially, but everyone knows. The cautionary tale whispered in bars, the lesson taught without words, and 43 witnesses learn what survivors always learn. Sometimes staying alive means forgetting, means going blind, means understanding that the law protects you only when it's convenient and abandons you when protection becomes complicated. The file sits in the basement, closed, forgotten, gathering dust, just like Red Malone's hand, somewhere in a medical waste facility, burned to ash, gone forever. But the lesson remains, carved into flesh, written in scar tissue, permanent as tombstones. The city looked away. Harlem stepped forward, and the balance of power shifted without a single official word acknowledging it happened. That's how empires change hands, not with declarations, with silence. 60 hours after Red Malone lost his hand, Patrick Flanigan makes the decision that will cost him everything. He sits in his office above Sullivan's Tavern on 48th Street, staring at the problem Bumpy Johnson created. Red is useless now, marked, broken, a walking advertisement for Harlem's power. The other crews are watching, waiting to see if the West Side Irish still have teeth or if they're going to roll over for a black gangster. Flanigan can't let that stand. Can't let the streets think he's weak. Can't let Bumpy Johnson take subway territory without consequences. So he calls in the cleanup crew. 8 men, professionals, the kind who've been disappearing problems into the Hudson River since Prohibition. Led by a man they call Cleaver because of what he does to people who need erasing. Real name is Michael Quinn, 42 years old, dead eyes, hands like cement blocks. Simple job, Flanigan says. Johnson's barbershop on Lenox Avenue. He's there every Tuesday night doing books. You go in, you do the work, you get out. Make it messy, make it public. Show Harlem we don't back down. Cleaver nods, takes the money, leaves. What Flanigan doesn't know is that Bumpy Johnson has been waiting for this exact move since the moment he walked out of that warehouse, has been planning for it, expecting it, preparing for men like Flanigan to make the stupid choice instead of the smart one, because winners don't react. Winners anticipate. Winners set the board 3 moves ahead and wait for their opponents to walk into the trap. Tuesday night, 11 p.m. Cleaver and his 7 men park 2 blocks from the barber shop. They're dressed like workers, carrying tool bags that contain revolvers and knives, and the kind of equipment you need to make someone's death look like a robbery gone wrong. They walk down Lenox Avenue. Quiet. Professional. Scanning for police. Looking for witnesses. Checking exits. They don't see the watchers on the rooftops. Don't notice the cars parked too casually on the corners. Don't understand that every step they take has been observed, catalogued, reported to the man they came to kill. The barbershop door is unlocked. That should be the first warning. But men like Cleaver have been doing this so long they stop seeing warning signs. Stop questioning luck. Stop thinking beyond the next 5 minutes. They walk inside. The lights are on. The chair is empty. The back room door is open. Bumpy Johnson sits at his desk like he's been expecting company. Like he knew they were coming. Like he set the table and waited for dinner guests to arrive. "Gentlemen," his voice is calm, pleasant even. Right on time. Cleaver's hand goes for his gun. Doesn't make it. The doors behind them slam shut. Lock, barricaded from the outside. The windows are already covered, steel shutters that drop like guillotine blades. Bumpy's men emerge from the back room, from the basement stairs, from behind the barber chairs. 12 men with shotguns and revolvers already drawn, already aimed, already ready to paint the walls with Irish blood. "You have a choice," Bumpy says. He lights a cigarette. Takes his time. "You can die here. Tonight. 8 bodies that Harlem buries where nobody finds them. Or you can listen." Cleaver is a professional. He knows when the job went sideways. Knows when survival becomes more important than pride. "We're listening. Patrick Flanigan sent you to kill me, to make a statement, to show the West Side Irish still has power." Bumpy stands, walks closer. But Patrick made a mistake. He thought sending killers meant he was still in control. What it actually means is he's desperate, scared, making moves instead of thinking. "What do you want?" "2 of you are leaving here alive, to deliver a message. The other 6, Bumpy gestures to his men. They stay, permanently. The 8 cleanup crew members look at each other. Mathematics is simple. 6 die. 2 live. But who decides which is which? "You decide amongst yourselves," Bumpy says, like he's discussing dinner reservations. "You have 60 seconds. Then my men start shooting and nobody gets to choose anything." What follows is uglier than any execution. 8 men who came to kill together now turning on each other to survive. Cleaver moves first, grabs the youngest one kid named Danny and shoves him forward. This one. And Murphy. The other 6 object. Voices rising. Desperation making them loud. Making them forget they're surrounded by men with guns who don't care about fairness or honor or anything except what Bumpy Johnson tells them to care about. 30 seconds of argument. 30 seconds of watching men who worked together for years betray each other with the speed that only survival instinct provides. Bumpy raises his hand. Silence falls like a blade. Cleaver chooses. He lives. Pick one more. Cleaver points at Danny, the kid who's barely 25, who still has a mother waiting at home, who hasn't killed enough people yet to deserve what comes next. "Those 2 go to the back room," Bumpy says. "The rest of you, kneel." The 6 remaining men kneel. Some beg, some pray. Some just stare at the floor waiting for bullets to end the nightmare. But bullets don't come. Bumpy's men use baseball bats instead. Break kneecaps, shatter elbows, crush hands. Methodical. Precise. The kind of beating that leaves men alive but permanently damaged. The kind that turns professional killers into cripples who'll never hold a gun again. It takes 20 minutes. 20 minutes of screaming and breaking and the wet sounds of bones giving way under wood and steel. When it's finished, the 6 men lie in pools of their own blood and vomit and tears. Alive. Broken. Marked forever. Bumpy walks to the back room where Cleaver and Danny wait, hands zip-tied, listening to their crew get destroyed. You tell Flanigan what happened here. You tell him the next crew he sends. Nobody walks out. You tell him the subway is Harlem's. The streets around it are Harlem's. And if he wants war, I'll bring war to Sullivan's Tavern and every Irish spot from here to the docks. He cuts their zip ties. You have 10 minutes to carry your friends out of here before police arrive. I suggest you move fast. Cleaver and Danny drag 6 broken men through Harlem streets, loading them into a truck, leaving blood trails on sidewalks, while Harlem watches and says nothing and remembers everything. Winners don't react to their enemies' moves. They wait. They prepare. They let their enemies walk into traps and then spring them with precision that makes retaliation impossible. Patrick Flanigan sent 8 men to make a statement. Bumpy Johnson sent 6 broken bodies back to make a point. The cleanup crew came to erase a problem. Instead, they became the lesson about what happens when you underestimate the man who owns the board. 72 hours exactly after the subway incident. 7 men sit in 7 chairs in a warehouse on 145th Street. Not dead, not free. Somewhere in between. Red Malone with his bandaged stump. Tommy, the young one who watched his boss lose a hand. The 4 survivors from the train who helped beat Sam Price and choke Mamie Johnson, and Patrick Flanigan himself, dragged here by Bumpy's men 2 hours ago, still trying to understand how this happened. No rope binds them, no guns press against their heads. They could stand, could run, could try to fight their way out. But they don't, because surrounding them are 30 Harlem men who've been waiting for this moment, who've been preparing for it, who understand exactly what's about to happen and their role in making it permanent. Bumpy Johnson walks between the chairs, calm, unhurried, like inspecting livestock at a market. You put hands on my wife. You broke an old man's wrist. You stabbed a war hero. You sent killers to my place of business. His voice is conversational, almost friendly. Normally, these things end with bullets. Quick, clean, permanent. He stops in front of Flanigan. But I don't need you dead. I need you useful. Useful how? Flanigan's voice cracks. This is a man who's ordered 50 executions, who's buried rivals in concrete, who's never begged in his life. Until now. Every crew in this city is watching, wondering if I'm soft, wondering if Harlem can hold territory, wondering if a black gangster can make white gangsters bow. Bumpy lights a cigarette. You're going to answer those questions. What follows is not violence, not the kind anyone expects. No beatings, no torture. No breaking bones or cutting flesh or any of the brutality that normally accompanies moments like this. Instead, Bumpy pulls out documents, contracts, transfer papers for dock operations, warehouse spaces, collection routes, everything the West Side Irish control in the 10 blocks surrounding the subway. You're going to sign these. You're going to transfer control to Harlem. You're going to tell your crews that the territory is mine now, voluntarily, peacefully. He sets the papers on a table. Or I take it anyway, and you watch your organization collapse over 6 months of bloodshed that ends the same way but costs you everything. Flanigan stares at the documents, at his entire empire reduced to signatures on paper. And if I refuse, Bumpy nods to Marcus. 2 of Bumpy's men drag in Cleaver and Danny, the survivors from the barber shop. They're not beaten, not marked, just terrified in a way that makes Red Malone's missing hand look merciful by comparison. I sent them back to you as a courtesy, Bumpy says, to show I can be reasonable. But if you refuse to sign, the courtesy ends. Your crews don't get warnings anymore. They get funerals, starting with these 2. Then working through every man loyal to you until there's nobody left except you. sitting in an empty office, ruling over nothing. The silence that follows is absolute. 7 men understanding simultaneously that this isn't negotiation. This is notification. The choice is illusion. The outcome was decided before they arrived. Flanigan signs. His hand shakes so badly the signature barely legible. But it's there. Legal. Binding. One by one. The others sign as witnesses. Red Malone signing left-handed because his right hand is in a medical waste incinerator somewhere. Tommy signing because he's 22 and wants to see 23. The 4 train survivors signing because Bumpy Johnson just demonstrated something more terrifying than death. Control. Absolute. Total. The kind that doesn't need violence because the threat of violence is enough. When the last signature is complete, Bumpy collects the documents, hands them to Marcus. File these tomorrow. Make sure every crew in New York knows the West Side Irish transferred subway territory to Harlem. Peacefully. Voluntarily. Like gentlemen conducting business. He turns back to the 7 men in chairs. You're free to go. Nobody dies tonight. Nobody gets hurt. You walk out of here with a story to tell about how Bumpy Johnson could have killed you, but chose not to. About how mercy is more terrifying than murder when it comes with conditions. What conditions? Flanigan whispers. You never cross 59th Street again. You never send men into Harlem. You never speak my wife's name. You never forget what happened here. Bumpy walks to the warehouse door, opens it, and you never ever put hands on anyone under my protection. Because next time, I won't call a meeting. I'll call a funeral service. The 7 men stand, walk toward the door, free but not free, alive but not living, marked by something worse than scars. They walk out into Harlem night, into streets that will never belong to them again, into a city that just learned a lesson about power and control and what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Behind them, 30 Harlem men watch silently, not celebrating, not gloating, just witnessing, recording, remembering. Because some punishments are worse than death. Some punishments you have to live with. Some punishments become stories that outlive everyone in the room. Patrick Flanigan signed away his empire tonight. Did it with a shaking hand and a broken spirit. Did it because living as a warning is worse than dying as a martyr. The warehouse empties. The chairs remain. 7 empty seats that will stay there for years. A monument nobody visits. A reminder nobody forgets. Harlem executed its lesson tonight. Not with bullets, with paperwork, not with blood, with surrender, not with death, with something far more permanent. Samuel Price dies 3 days after the subway incident. Not from the knife wound, not from the broken ribs or shattered jaw. From infection that sets in because Roosevelt Hospital keeps black patients in the basement, where sanitation is a suggestion, and care is whatever's left after white patients get treated. He's buried at Woodlawn Cemetery on a Thursday morning. 50 people attend. Mostly Harlem residents who never knew him but understand what his sacrifice means. A war veteran who stood up when everyone else sat down, who bled for a stranger, who proved that courage exists even when it gets you killed. Bumpy Johnson pays for the funeral, the casket, the headstone, the burial plot. Doesn't attend the service, but sends Marcus with an envelope for Sam's mother. Inside is $5,000 and a note that says your son was brave. Harlem remembers. Nobody talks about it. No newspaper covers it. No radio mentions it. Sam Price dies the way most heroes die in neighborhoods like this. Quietly. Forgotten by everyone except the people who needed him to stand up so they could stay sitting down. But his grave becomes something else. A marker. A symbol. Every week, someone leaves flowers. Someone who doesn't identify themselves. Someone who remembers what happened on that train and understands that Sam Price's death purchased something that can't be measured in dollars. He purchased proof that standing up is possible even when it's fatal. 2 weeks after the warehouse meeting, the commission holds a sit-down in Little Italy. All 5 families send representatives. Frank Costello presides. The topic is territory, and specifically what to do about Bumpy Johnson taking subway control from the Irish without asking permission. The discussion is brief. Harlem belongs to Johnson, Costello says, has for years. The Irish got sloppy, crossed lines, paid for it. We don't interfere. He's expanding, one of the Gambino representatives objects, taking territory without approval, setting precedent. He's maintaining order, Costello corrects, something the Irish failed to do. Johnson keeps Harlem quiet, keeps problems contained, doesn't touch our operations, doesn't cross into our neighborhoods. That's worth more than subway platforms nobody cared about until they became a problem. The commission votes. Unanimous. Harlem remains independent. Bumpy Johnson remains untouched. The borders stay fixed, and every family updates their maps to reflect reality instead of pretending they control territory they abandoned years ago. 3 weeks after the incident, Mamie Johnson rides the F train again. Same car, same time. 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. She sits in the same seat where Red Malone grabbed her hair, where Sam Price bled defending her, where 43 witnesses learned that silence is survival. Her hands shake. Her throat still carries faint bruises where fingers press too hard. She's terrified. Every stop makes her jump. Every opening door makes her reach for the .38 in her purse. But she rides anyway, because riding means Harlem won, means the subway belongs to her neighborhood now, means women can travel without fear, and men can intervene without dying, and the rules changed because someone was willing to rewrite them in blood. Nobody bothers her. Nobody makes eye contact. The car is full, but the seats around her stay empty. Like an invisible barrier exists. Like everyone knows who she is and what it costs to make this train safe. She rides from Harlem to Brooklyn and back. 2 hours. Then goes home to Bumpy, who's waiting with dinner and questions he doesn't ask because he already knows the answers. How was it? He asks anyway. Scary. She takes off her coat, hangs it carefully. But necessary. You didn't have to go back. Yes, I did. She looks at him. Because if I'm afraid to ride the train, then Sam died for nothing. Then Red gets to think he won something. Then every woman in Harlem learns to be scared instead of safe. Bumpy nods. Understands. Some victories require maintenance. Require proving that the ground you took can be held. Require showing fear that you're not afraid even when you are. The subway belongs to Harlem now. Not because Bumpy took it, because Mamie rides it, because Sam died for it, because 43 witnesses remember what happens when you cross lines that shouldn't be crossed. The lesson is complete. The territory is secured. The aftermath is silence and memory and the slow understanding that power doesn't announce itself with headlines. It whispers. It marks. It changes reality while everyone pretends nothing happened. Harlem doesn't need protection anymore. It needs something more important. It needs to be remembered as the place you don't test, the neighborhood you don't cross, the territory where touching the wrong woman means losing more than your hand. Samuel Price died breaking a rule. 7 men lived to remember why the rule exists, and Harlem became the kind of place where justice doesn't wait for courts or cops or anyone's permission. It just happens. Quietly, permanently, like weather nobody controls but everyone respects. Samuel Price died for breaking an unwritten law. 7 other men survived to remember why that law exists. If you were on that train that night, what would you choose, silence to survive? Or standing up and forcing an entire neighborhood to pay the price for your courage? The answer defines more than survival. It defines what kind of world we build when law looks away and power fills the vacuum. Comment below. What would you have done? Would you stand like Sam, or survive like the 43 witnesses who looked away? Like this video if you believe justice doesn't always come from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from streets, from decisions made in seconds that echo for decades. Subscribe for more stories buried in police files, but written in blood on city streets. Stories about power and territory and the price of standing up when everyone else sits down. This is history they don't teach, but it's history that built the world we live in. One subway car, one choice, one lesson that still matters 77 years later. The next story drops soon. Until then, remember, real power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be remembered.